I'm designing a dating app for the dead. Why? Because dating is hard enough in the modern world. Imagine trying to find love beyond the grave. For centuries, ghosts have been stuck in the same old creepy gaffs, slamming doors and haunting elderly ladies named Susan. But what if they're not vengeful, just bored and lonely? So today I'm creating the first ever dating app for ghosts, where lost souls can finally find their eternal match. Or at the very least, someone to haunt Susans with. Now, logically, yes, ghosts shouldn't be able to use phones, but we've all seen the horror movies where spirits love to mess with TVs, radios, and flickering lights. So why can't they use those same frequencies to access our app? Now, current dating apps all seem to have a unique feature which sets them apart. Tinder, the originator of left-to-right swiping. Hinge, profile prompts, and corny answers. And Bumble, where women have to make the first move. All very strong contenders. And so if I want my app to sit at the big boys' table, it's got to offer something truly game-changing. So what can we do differently? So all of these apps match users based on location and proximity. However, if our users are able to just float across the seas, then this doesn't really apply to ghosts. Perhaps we could make a matching system based upon their unfulfilled bucket list goals, or maybe the interest they both share in common. How about unfinished business they both share, or the year they both passed away in? With all these different choices, I was finding it difficult to make a decision, until it hit me. What if we just combine them all, and the unique feature is the multi-option matching system? Sorted. Right, name time. So our app falls under 3 pillars: love, messaging, and ghosts. We need a name that captures the essence of all 3. I want something that's memorable, clever, and creates an impact when spoken. Okay, I've got the perfect name, however, we do have some honourable mentions, starting with Ghosted. Modern and funny, but has a negative connotation. Boo, simple, memorable, but it just doesn't feel quite right. Spooker could be a funny parody for Tinder, but for the tragically deceased. However, the name we're going with is Soulmate. It's memorable, it's clever, and it has that perfect balance of spooky charm and heart. Plus, it's super versatile when it comes to branding. Right then, let's design the app icon and really bring Soulmate to life. Now, when designing the icon of this app, I wanted to create something that combined our 3 pillars. So I began by creating simple icons for ghosts, messaging, and love. However, then adding a ghostly twist like the droopy elongated eyes or wavy cartoon ghost lines. The most successful app icons all seem to be very simple in design, so I wanted to create something that wasn't too complicated. I actually was trying a new logo process for this by essentially duplicating the icon and then making a change to it separately to the previous. This was a really great way to see how the logos were developing gradually. However, I also wanted the ability to just go back and grab unrefined copies to then adjust later down the line. I knew that I wanted an icon which didn't take itself too seriously, something that's fun and playful, yet brings a ghostly take on dating. This playful element allowed me to add facial expressions and eyes to the little characters, really creating a few quirky concepts. Once I started feeling like I had a good few icons to go forward with, I picked them out separately and continued to refine them in the context of an app icon square. This just allowed me to see how they would look once off the page and within our product. I'm having a tough time choosing which one to go with, as I quite like them all, except for the marshmallow looking one. Sorry, bro. So it might be the most obvious design on the page, however, I quite like that about it as we're not trying to design anything too serious, and therefore I think we're going to go with this one. It just says exactly what it is, and for a ghostly dating app, that's what we need. And so, moving forward with our icon, I wanted to expand on the visual identity. How does this icon mark look when next to a word mark, or a screen, and what colours could be used within our brand and the app? This page was essentially my creative dump by finding the right fonts and the visual identity before moving forward with the app design. So I want the design to feel very illustrative and fun, more like an illustrator's concept of an app design than an actual technical app design. So I do think these cutesy little ghost faces actually bring a lot of life to the project and make something that's kind of morbid and a bit dark quite fun and playful. And so with this decision, I explored a few different ghost variations before landing on this final concept with these adorable little tiny ghost faces. Now there was one last thing before really bringing this app to life, and that was a slogan. I decided to go with "Yours awaits," that would nicely follow on from app name Soulmate. Okay, so going forward with the illustrative approach, I'm actually going to design the user photos first. And there's quite a few characters to design, so I think I'm going to stick to a bit of a simple 2D flat graphic style for these. The first character I had in mind was a headless man from the Victorian era, who'd be rocking one of these old school ruffled neck collars. I wanted to clearly show that he was from this older era, so I stuck to very muted monochrome colours as if this picture was taken from a Victorian vintage camera. If they had cameras back then. This next character was my favourite design, and fortunate for him, he still had his head. However, to show that this guy was no longer living, I wanted to add a sort of ghostly pale blue skin tone. My idea was to have this vintage Arctic explorer, who may have fell down an icy mountain on his travels. I was able to hint at this with an ice-tipped mustache and broken ski goggles. Now my next character was quite boring, so we're just going to skim past her, but essentially she was just an early 2000s librarian. I thought it'd be really fun to show how the app has some big historical names trying to find love, so I added Cleopatra from ancient Egypt. I definitely wanted to keep a stern facial expression with her, as I can't imagine she was too smiley back in the day. And of course we needed to show a variety of different ages, so I designed this young soldier. Not quite sure on the time period he would be from, but I was definitely going for a more vintage look with him. And finally, one modern day character, I created this friendly middle-aged man who may have just passed in the last couple years or so. Okay, so how could our app actually look? I've sketched out a rough concept that I can follow along when designing. We essentially begin with our login screen, followed by the homepage. Then to the right we have our messages tab, and the left could be the actual user's profile. When incorporating the user profiles, I thought it would be cool to have them sit within this tombstone border, as opposed to a standard square or rectangle, as this would emphasise that ghostly feel. My idea for this matching screen was to have 4 potential matches pop up, which could be refreshed each day. This would make the app feel a little bit more esoteric, as it was only matching you with people you had most in common with. And I also like the idea of showing that even in the afterlife, there are still these big corporate tech companies who would try and charge more for upgraded subscription plans. For the next screen, I wanted to show how the user profile might look once clicked on. So I stuck with the tombstone design followed by some facts, like the year of death and how old they were when passing, as this would essentially be their frozen age within the afterlife. And of course, they needed a bio. And Brian here, I wanted him to come across like he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for being one of the first Arctic explorers in history. Now, I knew that this would all be animated after to show how the app would look in motion, so I designed how the drop-down filter button might look for the multi-option matching system. And this would give you different options to match users by. But as mentioned, this is where you could also upgrade your plan for more matches each day. Now, how might the messaging system look, you ask? Well, Lance Dijon here will show you with this awful conversation starter. Followed by Colin, who was just as bad. Come on guys. Each message request would pop up followed by a choice to reply or simply delete. Or block, as I can't imagine how a DM might look from a big bearded Viking man. And finally, we have the user profile, where we have the options to update our information, bio, and pictures. And so, with the app designed, I then illustrated this simple ghost hand, which would be used within our animation. Bringing the app screens into Premiere Pro, I used motion tracking and placement markers to bring it all to life. I've recorded all of this process, so do let me know if you'd like me to make an in-depth tutorial on this separately. Now, without further ado, I present to you Soulmate. This is Soulmate, a dating app for the dead. Whether you've lost your head to a guillotine or perished in the plague, Soulmate connects you with centuries of kindred spirits just waiting to haunt with you. With our unique multi-matching system, you can find a partner to check off those unfinished bucket list goals. Or simply bond over shared afterlife interests. Whatever you're searching for in the great beyond, Soulmate has you covered. Soulmate has millions of users worldwide just dying to connect with you today. Literally. So quit haunting your ex and download Soulmate from the Phantom Market today. Soulmate. Yours awaits. So let me know your thoughts on this fun take on an app design, and while you're here, you may as well check out my previous video where I redesigned my pet gecko's food packaging.